This is the story of how Billy the Kid gambled his freedom for love and died for it. Billy had outrun bullets, men, even death itself. But love was a danger he could never escape. Her name was Paulita Maxwell, 16, maybe 17. Dark eyes full of life, quick to smile. And she was the girl who stole Billy's heart. On April 28, 1881, he had cheated death once more. 2 deputies lay dead. The hangman's noose escaped, the jailhouse behind him. A stolen horse carried him into the New Mexico night. Ahead of him stretched freedom. Mexico lay only days away. The law would never catch him. He could have lived. And yet, he lingered, pulled by desire, tethered to a girl who would change the course of his life and his death. And that choice, that single, reckless, beautiful choice, would cost him everything. But before our tale continues, let's rewind to where the legend first began. He was called many names: Henry McCarty, William Bonney. But history would remember him as Billy the Kid, a boy who became an outlaw, and an outlaw who became a legend. At just 21 years old, his story ended in blood. Or did it? More than a century later, people still ask the same question. Did Billy the Kid really die in 1881? Or did he escape to live on in the shadows? Billy the Kid's life began far from the deserts of New Mexico. Born Henry McCarty in 1859, likely in New York City, he grew up poor, fatherless, and restless. After his mother's death from tuberculosis, he drifted west, scraping by on odd jobs and small crimes. By 16, he was already wanted for theft. By 17, he had killed a man. In 1877, at a saloon in Arizona, Billy clashed with a blacksmith named Frank P. Cahill. The fight turned violent. Billy, just a skinny teenager, pulled a revolver and fired. Cahill died. The boy fled, and from that moment on, Henry McCarty was gone. The world would know him only as Billy the Kid. In the New Mexico Territory, cattlemen and merchants ruled through power, money, and violence. When 2 rival business factions went to war, Billy joined one side as a hired gun. What followed was months of ambushes, murders, and blood feuds. Billy fought in the Battle of Lincoln in 1878, where his skill with a 6-shooter earned him a reputation: deadly, fearless, unpredictable. By 19, Billy the Kid was wanted across the territory. Some saw him as a dangerous killer. Others saw him as a folk hero, a boy striking back against corrupt ranchers and crooked politicians. Dime novelists seized on his story, printing wild tales that made him a national sensation. But behind the myth stood a young man who laughed easily, played cards endlessly, and lived with a shadow of death at his heels. Those who knew him did not speak of him as a monster. They remembered the smile. A friend recalled, "He was the best-natured boy I ever knew, always laughing, always joking." Another remembered his charm. He was slim, with blue eyes and a way about him. He laughed easily. He danced like a Spaniard, and he was always polite to the ladies. This was not the bloodthirsty killer of dime novels. This was a boy who loved music, who joined the Mexican villagers in their fiestas, who spoke their language, who belonged at their tables. They called him El Chivado, the Kid. And in those villages, among those people, Billy the Kid was not an outlaw. He was loved, and in time, he would find the one person who loved him most. To her, he was not a fugitive. He was not a legend. He was a young man who dressed neatly, who smiled often, who wanted nothing more than to be with her. In her eyes, and in the eyes of the villagers who loved him, Billy the Kid was not a murderer. He was a boy in love, and that love would seal his fate. In April 1881, Billy was captured after months on the run. Sheriff Pat Garrett, once a drinking companion, now stood as his relentless pursuer. A court sentenced Billy to hang for murder. But the Kid had other plans. On April 28th, locked inside the Lincoln County Courthouse, Billy overpowered a guard, stole his shotgun, and gunned down 2 deputies. Shackles still on his ankles, he mounted a horse and rode out of town, laughing into the night. They say Billy the Kid could have been free. He had the horse, the desert, the stars to guide him south. But a man don't ride away from love, not when it burns that bright. And so, instead of freedom, he chose Paulita, and that choice sealed his fate. For Billy, who had known only loss, a dead mother, a father he barely remembered, friends shot down in the Lincoln County War, Paulita was different. She was warmth. She was belonging. She was a reason to stay. He danced with her at the village fiestas, his arm around her waist, his boots kicking dust in the glow of lantern light. The villagers watched and smiled. Billy, their blue-eyed friend, and Paulita, their dark-haired beauty. It was dangerous. It was reckless. But to Billy, it was worth every risk. The jailbreak shocked the nation. Newspapers declared him unstoppable. Sheriff Garrett refused to be humiliated. He organized a posse to track Billy's movements and listen for whispers of the kid hiding among friends and sympathizers. Garrett hunted Billy relentlessly, but it was whispers of the Maxwell house, of Paulita, of Billy's nightly visits that gave Garrett his chance. For Garrett, this was no dime novel. It was a job, and a dangerous one. The kid had already killed 2 deputies in cold blood. If Garrett failed, it would be his own life. On the night of July 14th, Garrett slipped into the house of Pete Maxwell. The night was hot and still. Billy was restless. Some say he was hungry. Some say he was looking for Paulita. Some even whisper he was headed straight to her room. Inside, Pat Garrett waited, speaking quietly with Pete Maxwell in the darkness. In the dark, Billy entered the room, unaware Garrett was waiting. "¿Quién es? ¿Quién es?" "Who is it? Who is it?" Billy called into the darkness. Garrett fired once. The bullet struck above Billy's heart. The boy outlaw fell dead instantly, just 21 years old. Outside, the villagers woke to the sound of the gunshot. Paulita rushed to the doorway, her heart breaking as word spread. Billy was gone. The boy who could have lived, the boy who could have fled, the boy who smiled, who laughed, who loved her, lay dead in the dark. News of his death raced across the West. Some mourned, others celebrated. But no one doubted. A legend had been born. Or did he really die? Almost from the moment Garrett declared Billy dead, rumors spread. Some insisted Garrett had killed the wrong man. Others swore they saw Billy alive years later in Texas or Mexico. In 1950, an old man in Hico, Texas, known as Brushy Bill Roberts, claimed he was Billy the Kid, now in his 90s. He begged for a pardon. Some dismissed him as a fraud. Others believed. The truth remains buried beneath myth and memory. Billy the Kid's life was brief, barely 2 decades, but his legend has lasted for more than a century. Some say he was a ruthless killer who gunned down men without hesitation. Others see him as a victim of corruption and circumstance, a boy caught in a violent world he never made. Or perhaps he was something in between, a symbol of the blurred line between outlaw and folk hero. In the decades that followed, writers rushed to tell the story of Billy the Kid, but they did not tell the story of Paulita. They told of an outlaw, a desperado, a killer who gunned down 21 men, one for every year of his life. It wasn't true, but it sold. The legend of the outlaw grew larger than life. It spread across newspapers, books, and eventually Hollywood screens. Billy the Kid became a symbol of the Wild West, reckless, violent, unforgettable. But in the process, the real boy was lost. The boy who dressed neatly, the boy who smiled easily, the boy who loved. And Paulita's voice, soft, almost drowned by the roar of legend, was the last whisper of the truth. She later recalled,
"They said I was the cause of his death. That's not true. He had many friends here, but yes, we were fond of each other.
Fond. But fondness does not make a boy risk his life. Love does. But what do you think? Was Billy the Kid a murderer, a misunderstood young man, or both? And do you believe he truly died that night in Fort Sumner, or that he escaped to live on under another name? Tell us in the comments, because the debate over Billy the Kid is far from finished. The trail stops here, but the legends ride on. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe to chase the next one.